Okay, I guess you can see my screen now. I'm not sure if sharing the right way or not. Anyway, let's start right away. We already some time. Okay, this is the contents of the presentation. We have overview, problem of the study, aim of the study, importance of the study, methodology of the study, literature review, case study, managing the heritage of ALEPPO'S River Massacre, which is the case study anyway, general plan for managing Syrian negative heritage, and expected difficulties, discussion, conclusion, and recommendation at the end. So we're talking about overview. As you know, 11 years ago, 12 years ago, Arab Spring started with peaceful demonstrations. And the same was in Syria, and they were torturing detainees. They were arrested for demonstration. And that, in fact, started before the uprising, and that was the spark, let's say, or that's what triggered the uprising. Children were detained and were tortured in Daraa. And Russia, Iran also intervened. Schools, hospitals, markets were targeted. Chemical attacks and massacres. Yeah, chemical attacks on systemic basis, as some reports describe them. And hundreds of thousands killed and millions were displaced. So what is the problem of the study? There is no management of the Syrian negative heritage to seek justice so far. So can we do that? This is the problem of the study. And the aim of the study is proposing a general plan for managing the Syrian negative heritage. The importance of the study that manage the negative heritage justice outside the borders of courts, because this courts need political decision, which is, it seems, it's not available so far. Now, methodology of the study, there is sampling. It starts with the literature and with the case study itself, and we'll say why I've chosen this study later. So the literature was taking different cases from different countries, from different perspectives. Data collecting, this is in the case study. In fact, there are the told stories and untold stories. This was the biggest part of the thesis. In fact, it took a long time and a lot of effort. Proposing and evaluating. We are proposing some, let's say, ways of managing and evaluating them to get the lessons learned and to generalize, let's say, a plan that can be applicable to all negative heritage, not only to the case study. So literature review. So what is negative heritage? It's connected to places of conflicts, massacres, and disasters. So it is an umbrella term. Under that term, you can say this dissonant heritage and dark spots of history, history of atrocities. Okay, and let me just wait. I'm not comfortable that people that can't see. Wait. Okay. Heritage of atrocity. This term you can find it in the literature. Unwanted heritage. Traumatic sites, inconvenient heritage, sites of difficult and painful heritage, traumatic heritage places, and hot interpretation. Here we talk about management. We talk about hot interpretation and the emotional steam, in fact. So let's now talk about the uses of negative heritage. First of all, let's say that management of sites where there is ongoing or recent conflict can become effectively used for managing the conflict. Like the case in Syria, because the conflict is still going on. We should control heritage so that heritage doesn't control us. Here we're talking about justice and revenge. If we don't control heritage, if we don't, this negative heritage, all is left is revenge, not justice. Here, talking about symbolic justice in this study might be achieved turning atrocities into a heritage that can facilitate social change. So we are after social change, in fact. The cases of negative heritage covered in this study. There are 3 cases in America. There is in Cyprus too. 1 case in Cyprus, 1 case in Rwanda, 1 case in fact, these are the main cases, but also I touched upon some negative heritage in Australia, Finland, and Germany. When I talked about political use of negative heritage, that was, in fact, mainly in Cyprus and Finland. And when the discussion later will focus more on that. When I talked about touristic function, I talked about Rwanda, and I also gave an example from Australia. And maybe this is the most important thing, which is values-centered preservation. The 3 cases in America, they are related to ethnicities, ethnic groups there, like Native Americans and Japanese Americans and the African Americans, the 3 cases. And now the next slide might be not suitable for children because I start talking about the case study, which is ALEPPO'S River Massacre. This is not ALEPPO'S River, in fact. This is Chin-Chi-Jon River in Seoul. And when we were learning this master about how development can be achieved, this was a very good example from Seoul, how a river could change the city. It was like a revolution. It brought life to the city. Unfortunately, I couldn't but compare with ALEPPO'S River, Quake River, also known as Quake River or Martyrs River, which brought death, in fact, to the city. Many people, the number is arguable somehow, like between 100 to 220, something like that. Many people were killed and thrown in the river from the regime areas to the liberated areas. So this photo is shocking, but people in Aleppo kept seeing this photo for about, this scene, in fact, for about 45 days. Every day, new bodies will come through the river. So it brought death. Sources used to get the told and untold stories. For the told stories, investigational reports, there are 2 reports, and journalistic reports, about 5 reports, I guess, and documentaries, about 3 documentaries. They were used to get the told stories. For the untold stories, I made interviews with activists and eyewitnesses, like, for example, the lawyer who was responsible for the for managing for investigating this case. He kept investigating for 1 year. I also met activists who documented the bodies. So one of them who took hair samples for a possible future DNA test that never happened anyway. And also I investigated artistic representation of the massacre. Many artists cover what's happening in Syria. This photo, for example, is for Mark Nelson. I guess he's the only one who captured or like tried to depict this massacre, in fact. And I talked in the literature, in this process, when I talked about untold stories, reasons why others might not have talking about this massacre, which make them, like, again, most vulnerable victims, maybe. It looks like they were victimized twice, and this is explained somehow in the 3rd chapter of the thesis. Now, this is the 4th chapter of the thesis, which is managing the heritage of ALEPPO'S River Massacre. There is a proposal. It was prepared by Aisha Lomar, thanks to her. So this proposal, let's have some details about it. It's based on the told and untold stories. The stories we could reach. So it's like tombstones with QR codes. You can scan them to get the full story of the victim, for example. Ages and sizes, like the size of the tombstone is different if the age is like someone is older, the size or the length of the tombstone would be longer, would be more. And in fact, if there is increasing like cases you discover, you just can increase the tombstones. This is a sense of flexibility. And this is where we just got some ideas from an idea applied for in Germany, in fact, for the members of the parliament who opposed Hitler. Metaverse. Metaverses or metaverse, here where we can apply the idea now. Since we don't have control on the plan, we just can have something virtual to do that. And maybe we can have a representation center. Maybe this is in the future when we control the land. And where we can just portray, where we can show works of art. And we can have visitors, ebook. These are ideas for this, in fact, for this proposal. Okay, there is another proposal about symbolic justice. Here, usually, when you talk about negative heritage, usually they try to show the victims, not the victimizer. So here, I thought that maybe we can show the victimizers. For example, Bashar al-Assad or whomever is responsible. We can just show him in the same way the victims were shown, were discovered, in fact, with his head blown out and his hands tied behind his back. I'm talking about statue, not him. That's why it's virtual or symbolic justice, not real justice, let's say. And so we are talking about the victimizer image, not the victimizer himself. That's why it's a symbolic justice, in fact, for this proposal. So here there is a problem, in fact, not a problem, that there is a concern. If you do that, people might sympathize with him, as one of the artists showed concern. If you show them him the same way the victims were found. So this is problematic, just in the evaluation we talked about that. We can also have memorial wall and obelisk for the victims. We can have also oaks for the unknown victims. Another concern here is the Islamic view, when you have to make, let's say, a statue of someone. In Islam, it's not that smooth topic, let's say. I just tried to send one of the most famous Islam question and answer, famous websites. And they said just it's not perceivable, it's not allowed in Islam to, even for this purpose, it's not allowed. There is a big discussion inside the thesis anyway about that. Now we come to the 5th chapter, to the last part, which is general plan for managing Syrian negative heritage. I'm talking about initiating and planning, talking about executing, and about evaluating and developing. So this is the initiating and the planning. Maybe the most important part here for us is spreading awareness, and this is what this thesis is trying to do, spreading awareness, in fact. So who are the stakeholders who can do that? Academics, their studies, in fact, revolutionary bodies, unions of university students. We can also, and this is very important, forming interest groups. This is, let's say, a lesson learned from Manzanar, in fact, in America. They did that, and it was very successful, forming interest groups for different cases. Like it could be one for the chemical attacks, one for the massacres in Homs, one for the massacres in Aleppo, and such things. Then we have collecting data, and these are people who can do it, verifying data, lawyers and academics can do it, and decision-taking mechanism should be reached, and then agreeing on values. And this is another milestone in this study. Who should agree on that? People who are concerned. That's why it's community-based, bottom-up, let's say, approach. The next stage is executing. So who will do that? What we can do, sorry, educational and artistic events, publications, candlelights, vigils. We can also have tailoring, teaching materials. All of these were followed in the cases in the American cases, values-centered preservation, obelisks, memorial walls, representation centers, virtual representation, metaverses. That's what I'm talking about too. Okay, now the stages. The last stage, evaluating and developing. We can get feedback from the targeted audience. And I talked about, like in the thesis, about a mechanism how to measure that feedback, quantitative and qualitative at the same time. Success measuring. We say a committee of the stakeholders can do that. Then coordination between interest groups to reach to form a union for all the negative heritage in Syria. So these are the three, let's say, phases of the plan. Now let me talk about expected difficulties. Too huge and still being created. This is the heritage, the negative heritage in Syria. This is a big difficulty, in fact. And the control on the ground, in most cases, is like, let's say, is under the control of Syria and Russia and Iran. So we don't have control on the ground now, for now at least. Heritage of fear, like this is all, especially for collecting data. People are still afraid. Maybe some of their, even people who are outside Syria, their relatives are still living there. And also, when you need some official papers, you need to take it from the Syrian government. And that's why people are still afraid. Overwhelming sense of disappointment, 11 years, and people feel that nothing has been achieved. So this is maybe the source of disappointment. Belonging to the majority. This is strange, but the victims, most victims in Syria belong to the majority. And usually the word is less sympathetic when it's about majority, not minority. This is also difficulty. Hunger for appreciation. People who are like activists and working in the Syrian field, they have hunger for appreciation, in fact, because they feel that their efforts are wasted and they've made a lot of efforts, but they didn't get anything in return. Many people think like that anyway. Lack of consistent positive behavior. This hunger of appreciation would lead to lack of consistent positive behavior. And all of that, in fact, from people who are interested in the Syrian case, Syrian revolution. And we have also technical issues, like we started today with technical issues. A lot of the links or photos or articles that are talking about what happened are disappearing from the internet. Maybe they are because they are having violent content. Maybe this is the reason, maybe for other reasons. And the last point here, that lack of any previous management. So like when we talk about Syria and the Arab world in general, we lack that. We lack that management of negative heritage. This is the last point, sorry. The traditional school of thought, which I talked about when we talked that, for example, if I want to make a statue or like drawing, whatever, maybe you can do that, but it will not be that popular. So here we should deal with this traditional school of thought and try to reach something that can help in promoting managing the negative heritage. Now the discussion. The political use of heritage, as discussed when tackling the negative heritage of conflict in Cyprus, may help in forming a unified identity for the Syrians. So there is something positive about it. However, it may be also used by the Syrian authorities. We have now different authorities, 4 governments on the ground, in fact, to keep holding to power regardless of any democratic practices. So we say the self and the other, let's keep in control. They are evil, like we are good, and no democracy after all that revolution. So we should be careful. Another point is touristic function. There is the Rwanda style and there is the Australia style. One case in Australia, which is Port Arthur somehow. So like in the future, if you have memorials like in Rwanda, for example, there are 8 memorials where people were killed in the genocide. So you can go there without paying money, and maybe this is better for the Syrian case, because it shouldn't be a place just to gain money. It will participate in the economic development, but in an indirect way, as it is in Rwanda, not in Australia, the case I've talked about in Australia. Community-based values-centered preservation of the Syrian negative heritage can be attempted and approached through a bottom-up management. So this is very important to go through a bottom-up management. So the people should be responsible for that, not waiting for governments, not waiting for political decision. Okay. And also to overcome the physical limitations. We have a problem with, let's say, we don't have control on the ground. We can depend on 3D virtual worlds, which are becoming more and more popular. negative heritage be actually helping in achieving justice? Sure, it can. Others could do that, and we could. We just need efforts. We need awareness about that. We need plans. We need applying them. So, and we need to take into consideration some recommendations. Okay, and I will finish with these 5 or 6 recommendations. Creating management plans for the Syrian negative heritage, or adopting the one created in this study, for example. So we need plans. No, if you are not planning, you are planning for failure after all. Forming interest groups that can be very productive in the bottom-up or community approach of management. Establishing a flexible and transparent methodology that can handle the technical and psychological difficulties. We talked about hunger for appreciation. So yeah, it should be transparent so people can really know what's happening and who's making efforts. Okay. And next, taking the virtual representation of the negative heritage that can make use of the already available artistic representations and working on creating more of them. Simulate a more flexible approach that can accept and encourage the artistic features usually included in the heritage management. Engaging teachers and educationalists in the management efforts through creating and using related teaching materials, something we never care about, but it is very important, that can help in remembering the negative heritage and promoting the desired values like seeking justice. Encouraging academics to do more research on managing the Syrian negative heritage, like this one, and there are others, in fact, this is not the only one. And this was the last point, so let me thank you, and let me receive your questions if you have any. Okay. Yeah. Wait. Again. Okay. Okay, let me just go to Teams. I can't see myself. Oh, it's here. Has it been always like that? I don't see myself. Or for that? Yeah, coming back.
Stop sharing.
Stop sharing. Okay. Oh, here I am. Okay.
Wesam, thank you for the presentation. It was thorough and very graphically pleasing, actually. Thank you for that. So, of course, we will have questions. So it's a master thesis. Maybe we can start with Dr. Morezi.
Yes, yes. By the way, thank you for your presentation. I truly appreciated your presentation and the work you have done. Of course, I read your thesis. I can't see you now, but I hope you can hear me. And I have a couple of questions, and so I can share with you. Actually, the first one is more related about the identification of case studies. Can you hear me, by the way? Yes, is it okay?
Sure.
Yes, okay, perfect. Actually, I'm quite interested about in the identification of these case studies. Of course, few of them are very well known, and you mentioned a few of them also in your design, in your proposal. So I think of course, you take advantage about this knowledge to plan a proper design and a proper solution for the Aleppo situation. But the first question is, how do you identify specifically those case studies? And I don't know if I can go on with the second question, or maybe I can ask later on, or maybe I asked. Okay, I'm asking to the colleagues. And the second one is I was quite curious about, because you explained clearly your idea about the executing plan and the collecting data and the verifying data and so on. My main question about this part, which is actually quite clear, is who is in charge Are you thinking to a commission designed to supervise this kind of plan, or it's more an architect since you were graduated in? Because it seems to me that it's very clear, but I was curious about managing the head of this part of your job. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So the first question about cases, why I had them like from these countries, they're famous, some are not. Maybe I avoided the most famous. I avoided the one Hiroshima, for example, and I avoided, let's say, Holocaust. Maybe these are the most famous, let's say, because I thought that we need to know about them. Syrians need to know about them. We don't know that there was that negative heritage, and it was managed in different countries. Like if you just talk about America, okay, America is America after all. They say you can't compare Syria to America, but how about Rwanda, for example? So it's like closer geographically and politically, let's say, to Syria. Cyprus, for example, just cases around where might be similar. So I try to just geographically and prospectively take it from different aspects. I can never cover all the negative heritage management in the world, but I just try to have different and recent and old at the same time. And for example, with the American cases, it's very interesting that it took them for about 60, 70, 80 years to reach their goals. I hope that it would take us that time if we learn lessons from them. Okay? Unlike more recent ones like Rwanda and Cyprus, in fact, there wasn't that management. It's just a political decision after all. Finland the same, just let's destroy the churches built in the Russian Empire duration, whatever. This was political. I'm talking about, which comes to the second question, which is who would manage that? Who is responsible for that? That's why I think it's community-based. That's why interest groups who are interested, like some people from Homs would be very, very interested to have something about Homs, let's say. So survivors and their families, whatever. Later on, I advise that later on we can have a unified, let's say, body, because unfortunately, the experience in Syria, once you look for positions, many people would, okay, let me take that position and no work, unfortunately. But if you start with work, with like these interest groups and achieving things, then people who are really managing things can become in control. Like somehow democratic practice, even in managing the negative heritage, or especially in managing the negative heritage, because after all, this is one of the values Syrians made this revolution for. So this is the mechanism. It should be something later, not begin with let's have the head, let's have Dr. Salah, because he's the most experienced one. The head of that, he'll become dictatorship maybe. Oh, he's not for sure. But like this is just an example because he's very experienced in that. But academics can help a lot in that, in fact. That's why I always mention academics because they think in systematic way. They don't have this hunger for appreciation. Let's say they already have got their value. And I guess they can step in and become more active in this process. I hope the answer met your question.
Yes, thank you. Actually, I noticed that you mentioned specifically competences, knowledge in the lawyers, for example, about verifying the data. But I was curious about, but actually you answered my question. So thank you so much, and thank you also, Professor Rukiye Shetin, to let me be first in this question. So thank you.
So you may have a second tour of questions for later on also, if you like. Dr. Salah, do you wanted to ask anything or questions?
I wanted to add one thing. I don't know if you can hear me because I'm talking from this microphone. So is it clear or I can...
Just I'll mute myself. Yeah.
I think now it is better, more clear, no? Okay, so there is an echo when there are two microphones, it is recycled again. No, I wanted, more than asking, I wanted to add a few things related with Wesam thesis. One that, yes, he has chosen the river massacre, Aleppo River massacre, as the case study or the main case study to implement his work on. But actually, the idea was to think more globally for the whole negative heritage in Syria, which is unfortunately it's that diverse which required the diversity of different case studies to be able to learn from or experience in order to see what is possible to be used, what can be modified, what not. The other thing that he spent a long time in also trying to spread this by publishing different conferences, and finally he has been accepted in the International Journal of Cultural Heritage about these prospects after a very good feedback came from the reviewers. 3, they were tough actually, but it was really helpful. So we appreciate also if you can give some recommendation to add or enhance also the quality of the thesis itself in this way, because it is one of the earliest academic works related to negative heritage. Even in Syria, even the heritage, and Professor Merezi remembers the normal heritage, the building management which we had, it wasn't that suitable. Or so now we are talking about a new topic, a new field. Unfortunately, it's painful, but it requires. So starting with this, it will encourage others to try to contribute in a way, even with an advice for the thesis. So in the future, this management can help in recovery somehow, even psychologically, if it's not physically or economically. The last thing I wanted to ask Wesam, that why he, and this is for joking, why he got only the design of his wife, Aisha. There was a lot of designers. Why except this one? This is for... Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you too, Wesam. Actually, if I only make an assumption over your presentation, I think your thesis is better. You didn't fully present everything that is more scientifically there. It was more kind of let's in the more glamorous way that you have presented now. But as architects, I would like to say that I really love to see a plan always, where the river is, how it is connecting the city and so on. And I saw from your thesis that it is like going through the heart of the city, and rivers or roads or railways that has their own certain direction from one point to another point. It's kind of a cutting the city, right? So it is like inside the city you have a kind of your city becomes two parts of cities if you don't know how to connect them together. Maybe it's just an idea. I didn't really get, okay, negative heritage is important, right? You needed to reflect that. But maybe you can give a contrast that what could have been the river for the city and what has been done to the city. So coexisting these two sides and showing off that what could have been and how the connectivity becomes such a division actually, not just talking about the physical division, also the division between the society and so on. So this could be also kind of an argument, not just the negative heritage, but okay, of course you can give emphasis to the negative heritage through a process of rehabilitation, a part of a process of rehabilitation. So maybe, I don't know. The second part is actually, this was not a question, that just came into my mind that it could be a little bit made better. The second part is mainly a question actually. When we talk about during our master courses, we talk about mainly that the management part, okay, you have a commission to manage some parts of the rehabilitation of the city and so on. Heritage management is a part of that. But you needed to have different actors, like from municipality, like from lawmakers. It is kind of a finance, of course, too. But all of them has been done through this, in the center is the Heritage Management Commission, let's say, in this commission and so on. So maybe you can, I mean, maybe you can explain how you can define the roles of the others with being in the center of the management to I don't know, to let's say sustain the heritage to today. Could I make it clear, or you want to make clarification? Sorry, I cannot speak loud.
I will try to answer what I got so that you can correct me if yeah. As for the river, yes, I guess in the introduction I tried to talk more about the history of the river and even the diversity of people living around the river, and even where the development before the uprising was centered is only one part, the heart of the city, ignoring the other parts of the city, which was like an introduction to the uprising anyway. Yani, you just have a long river and you just care about one part where it is already good enough. So unlike the river you talked about in Seoul, for example, thanks a lot for that. It was amazing how they could manage all the length of the river, how they held, if I remember well, 400 meetings or 4,000 meetings with the stakeholders just to get the best application of this, their idea. There is something about that, in fact, in the introduction, but it's mission impossible to try to explain everything in the thesis, like in the presentation. This is just something, I guess, unattainable, unfortunately. As for the second point, who could be involved? The situation in Syria is a bit different now. We don't have these formal bodies, let's say. And whenever we try to do something through municipality or formal bodies, things will be more complicated, in fact, because it's not like we can think of it the same it is in Turkey, already stable country and such things. That's why maybe this is a later step. Maybe I can just add it that it will become formal later. But if it starts formal, it will never goes on. Like it will never develop. Unfortunately, now there are other concerns for people in charge than negative heritage, than working for future, than working for 20 years later or 30 or 50 years later, whatever. That's why I try to concentrate on individuals and how they can work together, community, to achieve something. Maybe this was the reason why I avoided any formal supervision on the plan itself.
It is kind of a showing perspective. You make a plan with the community, but the plan, maybe it's a great plan, but you needed to know the future step, how you can make it, realize it. So who are the stakeholders and in what way it could have been a more successful, or maybe you shortened the time of the process. I don't know.
When I talked about different interest groups where they have their own body, then they have a union. It's just like a body by itself, not depending on other things. Like just finally, it will be a body of negative heritage in Syria. Other factors can participate in helping it, but it should not depend on them to be applied. So because our experience over the last 11 years is a bitter one of achieving something through the formal bodies, let's say. That's why I always believe that people should take the lead, regardless of any formal intervention, and that can come later anyway.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
I disagree, but yes.
if you were Syrian and living in Syria, you would agree.
They can initiate it. They should have the power. They should be in the center, the community itself, but they cannot succeed it on their own. And otherwise it will be a dead end. But they can have the right to ask to the municipality how they can support it, or to try to look in some financing methods and then try to engage some other people also. It doesn't mean that they should intervene, but the leading party should be the community. I totally disagree in every type of, let's say, post-disaster events. But
maybe that's why I focus on virtual. Yeah, first virtual, because I know that on the ground now things are not stable enough. I just want everything to be stable on virtually. Then the image would be clear. Maybe they can adopt that after.
Long term. I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for that, Wesam. I have also my questions now. Would you like to add another question, Dr. Morese?
Well, actually, it's maybe me too. I would like to go on in this topic and following also the request of Dr. Salah, Ismail, about hypothetically advice for the research. I think that actually, well, based my consideration on your presentation, I appreciated that you outlined all the problems, all the issues you should face in the next steps. For sure, you should start at least with one of them. That's quite obvious. But I think the also basing about our question and our debate about your thesis right now, I think one of the knot of the research may be the identification of other other experts able to help you to fulfill all the requirements of your design. I know you are finishing a master that is truly based about this transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary approach, so you already got how it's important. So from my point of view, I don't know if you agree or not, this may be a question. I think since it will be not so easy to let this negative heritage be accepted by the population and by the community too, I think you may establish a work or a process or a design or a work, yes, with schools and with children. I don't know if you agree about this to this path in order to accept this heritage, and if you think about any kind of way to let the younger generation be comfortable with this idea, with this negative heritage, and so they can accept without refuse it completely. That's maybe I'm quite curious about this topic, which is actually not easy to deal with. Please.
Yeah. I'm very concerned with children. In fact, I've been a teacher for 20 years now, so education, let's say, is my field. If I want to expand, I will start from schools for sure. I believe in the next generation more than our generation, let's say, because they are more open to change. They're more open to achieve, let's say. If I have to focus on something more, it should be education. I just said tailoring teaching materials, but maybe I can go more into detail talking about this part, because I guess it's the most fruitful part as suggested, for sure. And talking about experts too, and maybe this is just a start, because I think that I'm just not about writing a thesis. I really want to work on that, to apply it. So I guess you and Dr. Salah and Dr. Ruqya, since you have a good idea about that, would be a good a start for this. You can just extend the net and be very useful advisors for any activity in this field.
Yes, hopefully we can, if any means, we are always there for you. It doesn't matter you have graduated or not, you are still a student and so on. And for me, I have also done my questions. I think it was a good study. Thank you for the presentation, and I like your master thesis more. I have to underline.
Which is good for me. The presentation is totally 20 minutes. The thesis is something will stay with me all my life. So thanks a lot.
So it is more thorough. So in your presentation, I couldn't catch the case studies, how they affect your thesis, how the direction of your thesis actually. So it was a good layout, better layout. Thank you, Salah Hocam. I'm done also. Again,
one thing to ask Wesam, which he also didn't mention during the presentation, mainly what were the other difficulties apart from the administrative, the situation on the land in Syria, but even during his meetings with the people, during his discussions, collecting the data, he faced strange, or not strange, but different type of problems which could be or must be managed. If we can add this part, it is very important, apart from seeking the appreciation. And if we can add and elaborate more, it will give the idea how the topic is important, and at the same time, it's complex.
Yeah, I mean, especially when I try to get untold stories. It's not easy to try to remind people of something they've been trying to forget for a long time. This is a big challenge. Painful memories, and you just bring them back. I just remember the guy who just took the hair samples from the victims. He told me how he tried to get a lot of hair so that if many parties would ask for that hair, it would be available, the hair samples. He got enough hair, but unfortunately, it seems no one did care, because when we were kicked out of Aleppo, when we left Aleppo, we displaced from Aleppo, the hair samples were kept in Aleppo. No one cared enough to take them. He was telling me that, and yeah, I felt pain in his voice. Just imagine himself as taking a lot of hair so that if more than one party would ask for it, it would be available, and no one asks for it. Another one is like when the lawyer who was responsible for the report, he told me how he worked 1 year on that report, and he thought that he's done something great with great evidence, whatever. But again, no one took that report from him. He's still having it, and he's trying to keep low profile because he thinks that that will endanger his life. It's just if he doesn't keep a low profile. So yeah, these issues are really painful. Yeah, I remember the first time I talked with the lawyer for about 1 hour. I took 2 Panadol, let's say, pieces, because it was really, yeah, I would cry sometimes, in fact, when I just listened to the stories. I thought that I had enough because I lived in Aleppo for some difficult time, but it seemed that remembering sometimes is more difficult than living the atrocity. And this is like dealing with hot heritage. Hot's negative heritage is not easy at all, and people should know how to deal with that, and should expect that people will not be always cooperative, because after all, after 11 years of conflict, we need psychologists, in fact, to deal with us and to know how to manage things. So maybe this was the most difficult thing. Sometimes you talk to someone, he's very excited, he wants to give you information. You try to contact him again, and he's just out of the coverage area, just like he's just trying to forget what he talked about or what he lived. I guess this was the biggest challenge for me, cooperation with people.
Yes, thank you again. If there is any other question, we can add. Or do you want to say anything, Wesam?
Okay,
add anything?
Maybe I guess you need to make a meeting. I would like to thank people, but I'm afraid I will thank them and then I will not pass the thesis. So let me wait, okay, until I have your decision about, and then maybe I can ask something and thank the people who are there, and thank people who are online, and thank you. But let me do that after your small meeting, the usual one. Or maybe you don't need that meeting, you just say that I succeeded and that's it.
Don't push it. All right, let's have a private meeting, Hocam. Can we have a room here? Right.
It was an easy process, I think. It wasn't that complex, no? It is lovely. the breaking rooms and the other things. So maybe we can start recording. Right? But in the other room.
Yes. Your webcam is off. If you wanna.
Which webcam? Mine?
Yours, yeah. At least I can see you. Oh. I don't know if it's my problem, but it's perfect. Yes, now perfect.
Thank you. Sometimes. Okay. Biro no jump. Shock him.
Okay, sorry, I forgot that I was the chair. I regret to inform you. Sorry, just joking. Congratulations, Wesam. There will be minor corrections. You will have a month to correct it. So it's a reasonable amount of time, I think. So congratulations. We are satisfied with your work in the general terms. Thank you. Yes.
Congratulations for your thesis, and we truly appreciate it. So thank you for your presentation and for your work. Thank you.
Oh, we cannot hear you. We cannot hear you, Wesam.
Thank you for being part of that. I'm really grateful, and I hope that it's not the end of it, it's the start of it. Hopefully you will be the experts, or some of them, to apply what we are trying to work on in this thesis. Hopefully it's just a start. Thanks a lot. I'm really grateful to you, to Dr. Salah, to friends and family who are there, and students. In fact, I have some students here, lovely students. So I feel overwhelmed, in fact, with your presence and their presence, and worth not enough to thank you. Really, I'm really grateful. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
You can show Professor Morezzi the girl he held when he came here, and to see how old she became.
Now, do you remember this little angel?
Yeah, ciao. Come on, you want to make me cry.
Just to be fair, and this is Raoul. Okay.
Hello.
There's another one.
Another
Wow.
one. That is a surprise for me.
And this is little Aisha. This is Aisha.
Oh, ciao.
Oh.
Wonderful. Wonderful. No,
Hopefully, in the future, you'll be their supervisors when they do their MA, inshallah, or PhD.
We'll see. Okay, thank you, and congratulations for your wonderful family too, and for your work and everything. So you'll need to you'll have a double party for your wonderful family and for your wonderful work of presentation and the thesis. So. Thank you so much, really. Okay, ciao. Really beautiful.
Thank you very much. I will stop the recording. Really, I appreciate it. And now